Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our series called Coping with Coronavirus. Uh, as you can see, I tried to change my background. I wanted to feel like I was outdoors today, and so I found a great picture of the Chicago skyline. It makes me feel a lot better. And I think it's most appropriate given what we're going to talk about today with our special guest, Dr. Randa Anderson. Just today's topic in particular, the title is Finding Calm During Anxious Times. Um, so, a little bit about Dr. Anderson. She's a licensed clinical psychologist and a member of the Orthodox Christian Counseling Institute. And she also serves on the board of OCamper. And for those who don't know what OCamper stands for, it's the Orthodox Christian Association of Medicine, Psychology, and Religion. And she is also on the National Task Force on Mental Health that was established by the Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops of the United States of America. Dr. Anderson is married and has two sons, actually, not just two children, two sons, and is a member of the Saints Peter and Paul Church in Glenview, Illinois. Dr. Randa, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Your Eminence, for hosting these and for being willing to tackle this very timely topic. I'm really glad to be here to hopefully offer some suggestions to people that will be helpful to them.
Well, we're very grateful, Doctor, and I've been asked by many people, what can we do? You know, we're nervous, we're scared, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Every day things change. And, sometimes the guy wearing a black robe doesn't necessarily know everything, of course. And so it's great to have professionals on these programs that could give people professional advice and kind of their perspective on what's happening. So everyone, I would say every single person that ever walked this earth at some point or another experiences some form of anxiety. We can control it if it's, not too much stress and anxiety, and we kind of go on. And then at times, anxiety can become overwhelming. But what are you seeing today, given the changing times and, what I mentioned before, how everything is constantly changing around us? We're listening to the news, and it's always about the morbidity rate, the mortality rate, how many people are sick with coronavirus. So what are you seeing from your perspective today happening with anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, even before coronavirus, I would say that anxiety is probably the most common problem I treat with my clients. But now I'm seeing it with my friends and my family, and it's everywhere, right? We've all experienced a huge upheaval in our lives. And I thought what might be helpful to start is to give people an idea, sort of a concept, a way of thinking about anxiety. In its most simplest terms, you can think about anxiety as a perceived threat to our well-being and a feeling of inadequacy to deal with that threat. And if you use that sort of working model to think about anxiety, then you can find your calm by putting some perspective, realistic perspective on the threat, and then developing some coping strategies to deal with your emotions and that feeling you have of being overwhelmed. And so those are the things I'm really looking forward to sharing with you and with everyone tonight, especially those coping strategies. So.
Well, yeah, and I just want to remind everyone that as you're watching us tonight, feel free to write questions. I'm monitoring two screens here, and you can ask Dr. Randa any question, or if you wanted to ask me something, feel free to just type it in. I'm going to do my best to scroll through these questions, and if you see that we haven't gotten to your question, feel free to write it again, and so that it can come back to the top of the queue. So, I mean, this is all good, and I'm sure that you've studied this extensively. You have incredible experience helping people cope with a perceived threat, a real or perceived threat. But, realistically speaking, what practical solutions could you offer? I mean, what steps, just even from today, when people walk away from our conversation, what do you think what can you offer to them?
Well, I have plenty.
Okay, that's
and I'm gonna talk fast so I can get through as many of them as I possibly can. The first thing, again, is to put some perspective on the threat, and recognize that if you are following the CDC guidelines, if you're washing your hands, if you're staying home, if you're doing all those things in your power to control the threat of the virus, then you can ease up a little on yourself and try not to worry, right? But also pay attention to what you're saying to yourself about coronavirus. I mean, we all have a running dialogue in our head all day, right? We have these automatic thoughts that pop into our minds. Pay attention to those, because if your thoughts about coronavirus are all doom and gloom, guess what? You're going to be anxious. You're going to be worried. But if you can try and calm those thoughts with some reassurance about your own realistic situation, if you're home and staying safe, it's not going to come crashing through the living room window, right? So mind your mind. And then to help you with that, turn the TV off, turn the news off. No one needs CNN running or on 24/7 in the background. You really don't need to pay attention to the daily numbers. Unless you're an epidemiologist or a doctor or a scientist, you really don't need to do that. And likewise, put a check on your social media use too. I'm on Facebook. My Facebook feed right now for the last couple of weeks actually has been about 80% posts about coronavirus. People are sharing the latest thing they read, the latest graph, the latest video, and it's fine. But use social media to stay connected with people that you care about and to communicate with them. Don't use it to just amp up your anxiety about coronavirus. I mean, it's been so overwhelming on social media. The Chicago Bears hired a new quarterback a couple of weeks ago. I didn't even hear about it on my social media sites. No one was talking about it. Come on, Chicago. So pay attention to that. Also, we talk about social distancing, which is very, very important, but I'd really rather we think about it as physical distancing and stay socially connected to our friends and family. Call your friends, text your friends, reach out to your family members, stay connected to your parish. So many parishes are moving their ministries online, so you can stay connected. Don't be distant in that regard.
So I'm gonna just interrupt you and I want to share with you and the others. The other day I woke up and got ready, went to throw out the trash, and as I went to open the door and I looked down, there was a little note from one of my neighbors. And this young couple, they know that my mother lives with me, and so they left a little note under the door for Mom. And they basically said, "We're here for you if you need us to get you anything. If you need something from the store, please knock on our door." They're literally next door to us, or call us. And this idea of staying connected, but also reaching out and helping each other is important. Not just to feel like we have to protect ourselves, but to see how we can help others.
Exactly.
It really helped my mom feel really good, and it made me feel good to know that my neighbor cared. So if I go out to the store, if I have to run an errand, I know that my mom knows she can go and knock on the door next to us.
Exactly. Important for everyone. Just a couple of other things that I typically suggest, whether it's anxiety about this pandemic or anxiety in general, is maintaining regular habits of diet, sleep, and exercise. Our bodies have to be well regulated in order to manage stressful times. And I know you're an example of that. You get your exercise, and I think that's really, really important. And if you think about the time that you'd normally spend commuting, now you have no excuse not to exercise, right? Because we're not in our cars. We're not in our cars.
Well,
right?
well, you know what? People are working crazy hours. People are working from home, and so they get up and they don't have a commute. So right away they go to their office. They sit at their kitchen table or on the couch and they start working. And then they keep working and they forget to eat, and they don't, they put off exercise actually. And, I have found that I've lost weight during this time, and it's not because I'm exercising as much as I should. It's probably because I'm not eating as well. So, I mean, the idea of diet, sleep, and exercise, remembering the basic things that are important for our physical and mental health, that's important. Yeah.
Exactly. And grab this opportunity to do whatever it is that gives you peace, whether that be a special hobby or reading, spending time with your family that are all now under the same roof. Those are all good things to do too. So.
We have a question from one of the participants, and it's pretty interesting. And I don't know. I'll just read it right off the screen. The person says, how can we identify signs of anxiety or threats, right? The perceived threats that lead to anxiety. So how do we do? How do you identify that which could lead to an anxiety? I know you mentioned mind your mind, but how do you do that?
Well, sometimes there's physical signs of anxiety, right? Our heart is racing. We might have a headache, stomach ache. So you might recognize anxiety that way. It might show itself as irritability, especially in children. If what you're saying to yourself are things that are causing those physical symptoms, like, oh my gosh, this virus is everywhere. I don't know how I'm going to protect myself. I don't know how to protect my family. I mean, pay attention to those anxious thoughts and really work on changing those. So. Yeah,
and I think you mentioned not being distant socially. I know social distancing, but socially connected. Maybe our connections, our friendships, our family members are the ones who are probably going to be the most honest with us and say, hey, is something wrong? Take it easy. It sounds like you're overly panicking or you're nervous today. Is everything okay? So, so you mentioned children, that it's easy to identify the signs of anxiety in children, or to see them kind of changing their behaviors. You alluded to children, but and most of the times we're thinking about ourselves, and you have a conversation about any medical issue, and you start examining yourself and saying, am I sick? Do I have this? I just coughed. Do I have coronavirus? Or I'm tired. Do I have this? But what can you offer us in terms of children? There's a lot of viewers who are probably parents or taking care of young kids. Can you talk to us a little bit about how, the coronavirus issue is affecting kids and how we can help them?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, I think as adults, we have to remember that kids take their cue from us on how to react to an unusual situation. So the first thing really is getting our own anxiety in check first, and then modeling for our children how to cope. And that's doing all those things that we just talked about and verbalizing, hey, I'm feeling worried about this, but I'm going to go take a walk and get my mind off it. Want to come? So there's that. Kids are in a tough spot right now in some ways because they're all home from school. For teens, it's especially hard. They're away from their friends. And they're having to do e-learning now instead of be in the classroom with their teachers. It's hard for parents too because now they have to manage that. And I thought it would be interesting to point out that Harvard University and many other universities right now too are moving to a pass-fail grading system this semester.
And that's great. I wish they had that when I was in school.
Yeah. But you're glad you didn't have this pandemic when you were in school.
No.
but point being that I think we have to have realistic expectations of our kids right now, and their schoolwork. And so I would really encourage parents to avoid power struggles with their kids over schoolwork. Be very proactive with rewarding for getting work done, and be empathic. This is really hard. This is hard for them. And I, just like I encourage adults to maintain a good routine of diet, sleep, and exercise, the same is true for kids. Certainly they don't have to get up at, the crack of dawn for the school bus. They can sleep in a little, but don't let them go till 9, 10, 11 in the morning. Keep them on a routine and involve them in setting that routine. Let them kind of help form their own schedule for the day. And then when the topic of coronavirus actually comes up, speak openly and honestly with them. Answer their questions clearly, and especially for younger kids, concisely. They don't need to be burdened with details. They don't need to see those graphs and those numbers any more than we all do. And then really listen to what their fears and concerns are, and try and address those without judgment.
You mentioned getting the kids involved in their routine, setting their routines, speaking to them honestly and openly. But do you recommend, and I assume it's going to be different depending on the age of a child, but at what point do you or not share with them the fact that you're feeling anxious? Is it okay to say, I'm having a moment right now, I'm a bit nervous? Or is that a bad idea because that may add to their anxiety? Are we supposed to be this hard, the strong parent, or can we show our vulnerability? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I think that in small doses you can do that. You can share your anxiety, but couple that with modeling how you're handling that worry. Like I said before, it's okay to say, yeah, this scares me too, but here's what I'm going to do about that fear. But I know scientists and doctors are working on a cure. I know that they're working on a vaccine. I know that the stay-at-home order is temporary, and we'll be back outside, soon. Kids don't really define soon anyway, so that's okay, right? So,
soon means right now for them.
Yeah, unfortunately, but yeah.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier that you're a member of the Orthodox Christian Counseling Institute, and it's other colleagues in that institute are Orthodox Christians, obviously. But what do you think? There's some people who might think, okay, this is not Orthodox. What we're talking about is not in our tradition. We haven't said anything about prayer yet. We haven't said anything about Jesus yet. We haven't said anything about tradition yet, or even church. We haven't. I don't know if we've used the word church yet. But what do you think is available within our tradition to help us? That's not contrary to what science is also saying.
Oh, there's so much. And I am regularly delighted by how my faith and my practice of psychology can coincide. But in particular, the church gives us for healing prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. We are in Great Lent right now. Hopefully, we're still all doing those things. And what's interesting, I'd like to focus on almsgiving in particular, because I think when we think about Lent, we usually think about the food fast first, and an almsgiving is kind of an afterthought. But I actually think it's actually very therapeutic. And there are studies that find that if you volunteer your time, you can experience a reduction in your depression and anxiety. So science actually confirms what the church has known forever. And I think that now more than ever, even from our homes, we can be the metropolis of mercy and practice almsgiving. And I actually have a few ideas about how to do that that will adapt to being at home. So, for example, I think that we can use our technology to reach out. You mentioned, your neighbor knocking on the door, but and offering help. But if we think about almsgiving as giving of our time and our love and our mercy, we can actually use technology to do that. So, for example, if you know of someone who's alone, you can invite them to dinner via Skype, right? And by Skype, I mean any kind of video conferencing. You could put the computer at one end of the table, have them on Skype, on FaceTime. They can be eating their meal, you can be eating yours, and they can be a part of the dinner conversation, right? It would be great if you're the person who's alone, maybe you reach out to a parent who's struggling with lots of kids at home and offer to read them a story over Skype. Or you can even play a game over video conferencing. Yaya could teach a recipe, right? I mean, my mother 2 years ago taught my son how to knead dough via FaceTime. She watched him knead and she gave him feedback on how to do that correctly. So we can really find creative uses for our technology to really reach out to other people. I think
and we're already using technology in new ways. I mean, I don't know how many people would have thought that we'd be celebrating the services during Holy and Great Lent this year practically virtually through the use of such technology. So we are using them for prayer services. Maybe we can, and even in teaching ministries as well. I know that we've been implementing them. So it is interesting to now maybe think about it. You want to go out for dinner with a friend, I guess put the iPad next to you or across from you, and you can have dinner together. So, Doctor, there's a saying, can you make lemonade out of lemons? And right now, for not to make light of what we have, but I mean, it is, we may have some lemons or lots of lemons right now. And can you just tell us what are some positive takeaways from this crisis? Can we make, can we see something good coming out of this crisis at some time?
Right. Well, I think I think the not addressing stressed out healthcare workers or, certainly all the people who are sick and dying, I kind of want to just put that aside a moment and think about the majority of us who are at home with our families, safe and sound, no one's sick. For us, I think there are definitely great ways to make some lemonade here. And in particular, I think we have an opportunity to really reevaluate our priorities, really rethink how we use our precious time, and really reconnect, and grow closer to our families. Actually, you said it last week when you were talking with Father Doug and Father Michael, that we have the opportunity to come out of this a more authentic community, church community. And I think likewise, we have the opportunity to come out of this an authentic family, the way we really want our family to be. No more rushing off to practices and music lessons, no more skipping church because you're too tired from the weekend, right? We can reconnect and really establish ourselves the way we want to be.
Yeah, I think you're right. Not many people get to eat together anymore, or up until a month ago or so. I mean, people were kind of always on the go. I'm going to catch, breakfast on the way to work. I can't make it to dinner today. The kids weren't together with their parents. So indeed, we're building up our muscles. Hopefully we can remember what it feels like to be together. So when we are out and about and able to then go back to normal, we can, yearn to come back to join each other at home and to be a stronger family.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would really encourage everyone to take a step back now and think about, what is it that they appreciate about this time? What is it that they'd like to keep from this time? What is it that they were in the habit of before that they're not doing anymore, that they really don't want to go back to? So that when we are, when these restrictions are lifted, let's be who we really want to be and not just fall back into the same routine that may or may not be a healthy one for us.
We often see that with New Year's Day, right? I mean, it's we have New Year's resolutions. We know what didn't work. We know what we don't want to continue doing. We know the new practices that we want to introduce in our lives. And, sure enough, 1 or 2, 3, 4 months later, we may get tired and go back to the old ways. This is a great opportunity now. Today's April 1st, April Fools. But we shouldn't be fools. We should indeed take advantage of this time together to see, as you said, what we definitely don't want to go back to and what we want to retain moving forward. Doctor, I just want to remind everybody, if you see a loved one or a friend that is feeling anxious, if you see someone that is down and feeling a little depressed, to do your best to find ways to get them the help that they may need. We listed in the Facebook page event some sources for you to consult if you or someone needs help. Don't be embarrassed. This is okay. It's okay to feel anxious. It's okay to not know what to do right now, but there are people there that are willing to help you. Doctor, any last thoughts that you wanted to leave with our people before we say goodnight?
I do have a favorite Bible quote, and I would love to share it. And it could be because it addresses anxiety. All right. This is from St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things.
What's the actual verse? I'm going to put it here on our Facebook.
It's Philippians 4:8.
4:8. Thank you very much for those closing words from the scriptures. And we thank you very, very much for joining us and for offering all of our viewers and personally for me, some great insight into how to cope now even more with coronavirus and how to be stronger families, stronger individuals, and a stronger and more authentic church. Everyone, thank you very much for joining us. We will be back with you on Sunday. We are going to be speaking about St. Mary of Egypt and the road to repentance. Thank you all. Have a blessed evening and be safe and stay home.
Thank you.